Most founders get overlooked not because their product isn't strong, but because their pitch blends in. Today's guest, Christian Hansen, a two-time best-selling author and influence strategist, reviews how top performers get chosen in high-stake rooms. You'll learn how to trigger trust, speak to the emotional brain, and become the obvious choice investors want to back. We'll break down the mindset, language, and strategy that make people say yes, even if you are not in the room. Healthcare entrepreneurs, are you ready to rewrite the rules for your business so you can have more time off, a great team, and more income while creating a positive social impact? Then you are in the right place. Welcome to The Provider's Edge. I'm your host, Sabrina Runbeck. I'm a provider, an international peak performance keynote speaker, and a best-selling author. Let's open the gateway to profitability for you today. My guests and I help healthcare entrepreneurs and startup founders like you break through barriers so you can control your business, control your life, and control your future. This is your defining moment to be a disruptor in healthcare.
Health tech founder, if you're tirelessly scaling your innovative solutions, constantly pitching your vision, and still waiting for that breakthrough moment to truly be seen, this message is specifically for you. The prestigious Health Tech Impact Awards are now officially open for applications. And let's be clear, yes, this is a highly competitive program designed to identify the best and brightest. It's completely free to apply, removing any financial barrier to entry. However, please understand, this is an exclusive opportunity, and not everyone gets in. We're looking for true innovators. This is your unparalleled chance to earn significant national recognition, elevate your brand, and refine your crucial pitch with personalized expert coaching. Gain direct access to top investors, influential health system leaders, and key founders, the very people who can open doors that will fundamentally change everything for your company. You didn't build your company to play small, so stop hoping to be discovered. Apply to be undeniable. Make your mark on the future of healthcare. Applications close sharply on March 1st. Don't miss this critical deadline. Go now to healthtechImpactAwards.com. That's healthtechImpactAwards.com. It's your moment to shine. Make it matter. Apply today and transform your health tech vision into a national success story.
Joining me today is Christian Hansen. He has gone behind the scene in some of the biggest organizations in the world to find out the reason why some people get chosen and why some people get passed. And who is two-time best seller for linking top 10 ranked author for the book, The Influence Mindset and The Influence Mindset for Sales Acceleration. We all know everyone sells every day on every single concept, but to truly be influential and get the buy-in from people through your communication, that's tough because we're always working with people. It's not just the product and services that you're set behind. And Christian helps teams and organizations who want to increase their earning potential by influencing people to choose them. So we're super excited. As we know, in any domain, whether you are a leader with a large organization or you're a startup founder, in every day, we're selling our concept, our vision to our investor, to our team, so they can do what necessary to achieve that vision. And we're selling to these enterprise partners so then we can support them to solve the problem for our patients. But how do we do it better in a way that what Christian says there are 7 EQ brain tricks. So we're so excited for you to join us. Thank you for being here, and tell us a little bit more about your background story. How does it, for anything that you're interested to do in the world, why sales?
You know, it's funny. I got my start in higher education admissions of all things, right? And as I was reading and interviewing thousands and thousands of people and their applications, I realized that I had a front row seat at figuring out the question of what makes people stand out. And I started to see patterns, habits, and techniques that master communicators were using that made them stand out. And so, as my career progressed from undergraduate admissions to running MBA programs and corporate HR, and even an ultra high net worth sales and financial services, these same things and patterns and behaviors kept coming up again and again. And I was wondering, why are these so effective? So I did research into it. And it turns out that our brains are wired to pay attention to certain things. And if you simply learn to communicate in ways the brain is wired to pay attention to, then you're going to stand out. And so I wrote my first book called The Influence Mindset: The Art and Science of Getting People to Choose You. And it was a #1 bestseller. And LinkedIn put it in their top 10 list for books on marketing, which is what I really love helping people know how to do it. How do you stand out? How do you sell yourself? And ultimately, how do you become the obvious choice so people want to work with you? And that's what I walk alongside sales leaders and people who are trying to sell themselves do. And that's a little bit about my background.
Yeah, I definitely can see in higher education admission, we always have this bio, right? Write an essay about yourself to get accepted to a program. And a lot of that is using story to sell on our experience, what we see our future can be, why getting this degree, what this campus can do for you, and to really narrow down into what that means for all of us. And that being said, that means all of us have been in this pattern, whether we believe or not, that we're
Yeah,
doing. And personal branding is a huge thing. I believe that we needed to get better at. As a leader of any organization, innovation, for example, you're not just branding your product, you're really branding this whole movement that you stand behind, right?
yes.
So, why we believe podcasting is great, speaking is great, borrowing other people's stage, yes, audience, yes, but it's because you have something that other people have to hear, right? And that's a brand in itself. So tell us a bit more about your research on what are these seven EQs look like.
Absolutely. It comes down to this. I believe that the most important conversation that happens in business is one that happens between someone you have just served and someone that you could potentially serve, right? The strength of your brand is measured by someone else's ability to communicate it when you're not in the room, right? And so, how can I influence the people that I serve to become not just people who I do business with, but for people who become people who tell my story to others, right? And to do that, we need to change how we communicate a little bit. Because at the end of the day, people don't choose or reject you, they choose or reject their perception of you. And the words and behaviors that we engage in, excuse me, are the materials that people use to construct those perceptions. So we got to understand a couple things here. Number one is that my brain has been wired through millions of years of existence to pay attention to things that ensure its survival. Now, if that's the case with my brain, then that's definitely the case with your brain. However, in sales situations, my brain is subconsciously wanting to do things that help it feel a bit more secure, to help it feel more status, to help it feel more safe and everything. And in so doing, when I'm in a sales situation, it's very tempting to do things that makes me feel great, but actually gets in the way of your brain's needs and what your brain truly wants. So, how can I intentionally set my insecure survival brain aside and focus instead on serving the person in front of me? Well, that happens through the power of asking, redirecting questions, or emotional intelligence brain hacks. So, for example, one of them that I teach, teams and companies how to do is to ask this very simple question. And that is, how can I also acknowledge this person's emotions right now? Sure, I'm going to be sharing the value that I offer and, have my presentation of all the stuff that I can do. But in the midst of that, how can I also acknowledge this person's emotions right now? And when I do that, that subtle thing, it gets me out of my own survival brain and my own insecurities and focuses instead on noticing the emotions of the person in front of me. And as I do that, I'm helping them feel like I genuinely care, which I do, and that I'm really concerned about helping them get to where they want to go. In essence, I'm speaking to their survival brain, and I'm not letting my own insecurities get in the way. So that's just one example of one of the EQ brain hacks that I teach and train people how to use.
Great. It's about when people are selling, exactly. We're so used to how we see things, and then we think naturally other people see the same way. So we actually, when we are into any friendship, I think is the easiest example is when we are with our high school friend, middle school friend, we start talking a different way, right? Behaving a different way. And people's like, oh, that's you, truly you. Well, we're adapting into that environment. And what you're saying is in the moment of knowing, become very self aware, but also become social aware. How
Yes.
are other people changing and moving and their way of seeing their own perception, emotion, and interpretation? How do we tap into their mind more by leveraging and using questions and to be
Yes.
so curious about where they are? What other things you would recommend for people to pay attention to?
One of the most common pitfalls that we get into is I call it the commonality pitfall, where as I'm meeting somebody in a friend group, it is perfectly acceptable to find things that you're in common with somebody. But in sales situations, we tend to engage, oh my gosh, I have that in common too. But that really is only serving my insecurities, right? To make me feel a little bit better. And so the key thing I want people to always remember is that commonality is a counterfeit form of connection. Okay. Now, if look, there are people in your life that you have lots of things in common with, but you don't choose to do business with them. Rather, and yet there are people who you do business with that you don't have very much in common, but you know that they're going to be the ones to help you get to where you want to go. And if they have things in common with you, then that is just an added bonus to helping that relationship go well. So people are going to choose you first of your ability to create value and helping them get to where they want to go. Number one. And then number two, commonality. Once that core connection is established, commonality then accentuates that. But when we just start off with commonality, it's not speaking to the person's survival brains. So again, commonality is not bad, but it must it augments existing connection first, not the other way around. So just be aware of that as you're communicating with people. That's a common pitfall that we engage in, that we're just trying to create commonality, but we're not really establishing that core connection of helping people get to where they want to go.
Yeah, I think that's because people feel like to have a report, they need to have some commonality just to open door. However, to actually see value and matching, I believe in when we say what's your value proposition in that, right? That value proposition is actually your skill set. You're able to solve a problem that they are looking to do, and not necessarily just because you're in the same sub niche, right? So a lot of time, even when we talk to startup founders, it's same thing. Well, just because they an investor group also invest in women's health before, it doesn't mean they will invest in you. You have to show some extra thing in what they don't know, what they want to, right, to support that. So even we use a predictive index to look at how, if you are a true promoter, right? And that means that some people are great at being a microphone, right? Cheering people on, but they're not necessarily great at strategy, right?
Yeah,
So if you don't have someone to give you the roadmap, you can just promote all the way around, but maybe you're promoting in the wrong crowd, right? So you need to have these balanced people to help you to fill the gap that you don't have. And then we also can't have too many strategists. People is going to plan all day long. You needed to implement to actually do the thing, right? So
absolutely.
knowing where the balance could be, and not necessarily we have to say, oh, if we have too many one quadrant people, then we can't do anything. Well, if we're become more aware of where we are, if we're just so many visionaries, mavericks on your team, how can you find other people with additional skill set to fit the rest, right? To create some better movements.
Absolutely. There was a study that was conducted in 2013 where a research group asked people, like a couple 100,000 employees at a variety of companies, and they tried to figure out what is the most valuable leadership attribute. And they determined that being perceived as a strategic thinker was the most important leadership attribute. And so much so that if you're perceived to be a strategic thinker, then you're perceived to be nearly 50 times more valuable than someone who is merely perceived as being highly skilled. And yet, so much of our language is, oh, I can do that. I have this experience. I've done this for this many years. But if you can shift your language so that you're being perceived as you can see beyond and you can help people get the value they're wanting and avoid the pitfalls, then your perceived value has just gone up by nearly a factor of 50, right? So that's just one of those little things. Little tweaks in language can influence how people perceive you.
Right, because we put so much heavy work and value, at least a speaking language, on what can you do, and but in partnership, especially startup, we see there's actually 5 level of phases of how do you divide up a value into a company, right?
Yeah.
So it start is that mission, vision, purpose alignment, right? If you don't know where you're going, what's the bigger north and star that you're chasing after, then the doing doesn't help you to get anywhere, right?
Not
Um,
necessarily. No.
not necessarily. And then it's what your expertise is, the people, right? We always believe in human capital is the number one driver in sustainability. And if we have the wrong people together, they are seeing different perceptions or they're too close to each other, then they can't see the big picture of the strategic thinking that you mentioned. So then we have to make sure the alignment in that. Then we move into, okay, then we can create the step, the workflow, right? The quality control. But
Yeah.
if we didn't create all that, you just jumped in, start doing things, which is actually we believe is in quadrant 4, right? To implement. And then after that, then you can truly say, okay, now I have the data. Did I measure? Did I do what I needed to do to hit my goal? How can I pivot and change, right?
Yeah.
So in any situation, I think we needed to change the language of not so much about the doers, uh, because that value too much about the labor instead of the forefront of the thinker, the strategist, and the quality control of what could be, and are we on the right track, the fastest track? What else would you suggest people to do in terms of shifting that thinking?
Well, we got to realize that for 99% of our life, we live and operate in what I call performance environments, right? Where success is based on how well we perform. In school, we learn that if you knew your stuff, you got good grades. In your job, if you do it well, then you get paid. But every so often, we encounter situations like in sales or maybe even job interviews or especially networking, where success is not based on how well you perform. Really, success is based on, do you influence people to choose you? And yet, we're not really aware of how to change that. And so we walk into these select environments doing the song and dance of, I'm smart, capable, qualified, and passionate. Look what I can do. And yet, we sound just like everyone else. So, in these moments, when you know you're entering into a different environment that's not a performance environment, how can you intentionally set aside the things you've been trained to do, right? The song and dance of smart, capable, qualified, and passionate, and instead turn into, how can I truly connect with the person in front of me right now so that I can build better connection, right? We just need to be able to switch off that part of our brain that we've literally been trained to do for our entire lives. How do we influence someone to choose us? That's the question we need to be asking.
What would you say are some of the conversation starter in those moments to really bring out a great, deeper knowledge of each other and not resort back to what we already know, right? The alkalis, the letter behind our name, the this company we work with, that company, this case study, right? Like how
Yeah.
do we get to that really human level?
Curiosity jump starts a lot of situations, right? And obviously, every context is going to be different. But if you walk in with a couple very curious and not just banal or shallow questions, then that is and express genuine interest in the person in front of you. Or if you have a genuine compliment that you can offer them, that is usually the best way to kickstart a conversation from scratch, right? So that little bit of research and coming up with a genuine question and expressing genuine curiosity and interest, it's one of those ways that then they're going to reciprocate it back to you in a way that you can then tell your story in a way that's powerful. So having sincere curiosity, it really goes a long way.
Yeah, what I'm hearing, let's just saying in the practical sense, a networking event for sure, right? You look into who they're speaking to, maybe is a newsletter, newspaper that they're holding, as things that they have in their hand, to even something to wear, to get to that curiosity of what a conversation starter is, versus investor conversation, more serious, right? More intentional. I always tell my startup founder to say, do your homework, right? Don't have someone just had an introduction and all you did is, here's my deck, here's my stuff I did, right? Again,
Yeah.
play into that, look at shiny things I did. But have you even looked at the investors' website, their LinkedIn, what they've been posting, what they've been speaking about, right? What curious you about something, that opinion piece that you can contribute in a way to soften, to relay back to them. And that can then ease into this big serious thing about money, funding, and what you're passionate about, right? Like, do
Absolutely.
your homework, isn't
Yeah.
it?
It that goes so far.
Yeah, what else can you feel like, as we are thinking about building these relationship? Yeah, for sure. Like, do your homework, think about creative ways to engage with people, um, and don't result into all the alkalis. Knowing similarities is not ultimately the first thing you start. It is really the value you can give to other people, and then add on to the similarity to strengthen that relationship.
Mhm.
What else would you say would be a key for people?
Well, I think 4 words are, for me, some of the most important tools that you can use in any situation, and that is simply saying the words, "That must have been." Okay? When someone says something to you, right, look for the emotion, the struggle, or whatever it is, and reflect it back to them. Wow, that must have been really difficult. That must have been really exciting. That must have been incredible. That must have felt so amazing. What that does is it keeps the conversation looped back on them. Because so often I can just take the conversation and piggyback and go in another direction and say, oh, well, this is what I think too. But I'm just merely looking for an opportunity for them to stop talking for me to insert, right? But when I intentionally have those 4 words, wow, that must have been, that is one of those ways that helps me stay invested in the conversation so that they feel that I'm truly listening and invested in them.
Such a great point to bring up. We use the 5 apology languages in terms of building a good co-founder and executive relationship. And one of the things it is, you have to speak back in what you heard, what you think you did, so people can have that validation of, you didn't just say sorry for the heck of just being
Yeah.
sorry, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a terrible experience. I'm sorry to hear that. And then you're moving on. Now it doesn't feel sincere for people. When you summarize, like what Christian is saying, then you give the validation. You actually heard them, right? Now you're embodying, and then that can even go into a deeper conversation if you want to.
Totally.
Um,
Yes.
it's just simply just tell me more. How is that going, right? Then that probably give you a more meaningful human connection with that person, and then they don't seem as a transactional, but you're really there with them to learn about them, and you can potentially build a business and do partnership together.
Yeah. Totally. You nailed it.
Awesome. I know we can talk endless about these things. I got geeked out on performance of speaking, all that fun stuff. And then that's what Christian does the best. So, anybody out there, you understand, as a founder, co founder, executive, you're not just leading an organization or a company, you're leading your own personal brand and the brand of that company. So figure out where is your position. What are the fight that you're really leading to fight for your community? What are the hero's journey that you've been going on and then helping other people to get on? Make sure to reach out to Christian to get better engagement, and he can help your entire sales force to get better as well. What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
I'm on LinkedIn. So Christian L. Hansen, if you just look up Christian L. Hansen at Influence. My website is thechristianhansen.com. I'm on social media as well, but any of those options is a great way to get connected.
Perfect. And as we wrap up, I want to hear from you. What has been one of the light bulb moment you had from our conversation? Write the comment on LinkedIn or wherever you're hearing and watching this, and we would love to continue to support you. Until next time, bye guys.
Take care.
Thank you for listening. Remember, the positive change we're seeking starts right here with me and you. If you are a fan of the show, or if you are just having struggles or success that you're either experienced in the past or are experiencing now in the healthcare industry, these matter to all of us. I want to hear from you. Visit sabrinarunbeck.com/connect and send me a direct message. Talk soon.